Yesterday, Paul Bernstein mentioned that one of the primary purposes of Prisma is to enable day schools to have competent leadership, competent and well-trained leadership. And I think that was something that all the trustees know, that from the earliest years of dedicating the Foundation's resources to day schools, leadership was seen to be a real key to the success of the day school enterprise. And our earliest investments as a foundation were in leadership. Back in 1997, the foundation invested both in the Harvard weekly summer week-long institutes for starting heads or more veteran heads. It's starting its 20th cohort this summer, happy to say. And in the last 5 years, we've had an LRP overlay that we do as part of it. And the same year, we started investing in DSLTI, which just started its 10th cohort. And that's an intensive 15-month introduction, which you'll hear more about from some of our panelists. We supported the Lookstein Principles program for about 10 years. That was a year-long program focused on leading school change. Then we did something that I'm really very proud of. For 8 years, we invested in Sulam. Sulam, you might remember, was Rob Suck's program. It was a sort of a crash course for administrators. To quote Sarah Cass, it didn't pass the giggle test, because when we saw the proposal, how could anybody do this? And that's really what Avichai, we were willing to take a risk, and it was one of the greatest, in my view, greatest impacting kinds of programs, because the heads of school committed to turning their schools into Jewish day schools, not just community schools for Jews, but Jewish day schools. And many of the alumni of those programs stayed on longer. More recently, we have a coaching program for new heads that used to be at Rob Suck and now is under Prisma. And YU Lead, which was under YUSP, that's a pipelining program for leadership. And that too, now called U-Lead, is under Prisma. The number of leaders we've touched is on our Avichai by the numbers. You can look at that. Many were touched, many were transformed, and I think that thousands of students were affected by these programs. A couple of years ago, as we started to really focus on our spend down, Mem was fond of saying that people will be our legacy. And I've taken that to heart in many ways. And I want to introduce you to 3 remarkable people who will be among Avichai's great legacy. To my immediate left is Rabbi Mark Baker, who's the head of Gann Academy in Waltham, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. Rabbi Adam Englander, who's the head of Katz Hillel Day School in Boca Raton. And we are so happy to have Amanda Pagani, larger than life, on the screen, who's the head of Luria Academy. And the way we'll set up this session, I'll just be asking a couple of questions and then asking the panelists in different orders to give us some of their reflections on the questions. So let me start off, because the 3 of you were really picked to join the session because you're extraordinary. You really are extraordinary in your own ways. So I'm just going to ask for you to speak briefly about yourselves, tell us your stories, your journeys, and how Avichai programs sort of helped you on your journey. So I'll start with Rabbi Mark Baker.
And we need this, right? Can you hear us, or do we need to put it right near us? Is this okay? Great. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm particularly grateful to be invited here because I was telling Adam this morning that I either needed to come here and share my appreciation, or I owe Avichai Foundation my firstborn child. So I'm happy to have the opportunity to redeem my oldest son, who is actually going to be beginning my school next year. For the first time, I'll have a child in my own school, which is unbelievable. But it does feel like at every point of my journey, Avichai has been there to intervene in a key developmental way. So just a few words about me. I grew up in the North Shore of Boston, I was what I would call a cultural JCC summer camp Jew. Toward the end of my high school experience and in college, kind of began to awaken to my own Jewish journey and found my way to Israel after college for the first time on a Dorot Fellowship, where I ended up at the Pardes Institute of Jewish Studies just before the Pardes Educators Program began. And that was kind of a huge point for me in discovering the possibility of deep Jewish learning and Jewish living. I ended up coming back the year after that in the second year of what is now Gann Academy, what was then the New Jewish High School of Greater Boston, an experiment in Jewish pluralism. As the director of athletics and extracurricular activities, a common first job for future heads of school. It was there that I really got the bug for Jewish education and realized that the leadership I had been developing at camp throughout my entire life was potentially relevant to a Jewish educational setting. I'm grateful to my mentor, Danny Lehman, who at the time said, this field is wide open. This was the late 90s when everything was booming. I went back to Israel, and that was back to Pardes, and there was the Pardes Educators Program, and I ended up doing the Pardes Educators Program, which was an incredible kli, like a very powerful framework for me to deepen my Jewish learning, and also learn at the time at Hebrew University Jewish philosophy and philosophy of education. And then I went to Atlanta for 4 years, where I met Michael Berger, and worked at the Weber School, it was there that Michael suggested to me, you really should do this DSLTI program because you may be on your path to school leadership. And the DSLTI had a profound impact on my journey as a Jew and as an educator and as a school leader. I ended up coming back to Boston and became the head of Gann Academy at a pretty young age, where Susan, another connection to Avichai, was on that board and hired me, so thank you. Yet another point in my journey. And actually soon into that process, I spent some time at the Harvard Principal Center, one of those early summers with my associate head of school, which was another key moment in my development, and I'm sure we'll have time to talk about those moments. But at every step of the way, and over these last 10 years, it seems that Avichai has been investing in me and in my school, and in so many opportunities for both of us, me and my school, to keep growing and developing and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So thank you.
So your firstborn son is outside?
There you go. I left him home. He's actually in New York right now on his 8th grade school trip, so he's on call if we need him.
Wait till lunch. We'll turn now to Amanda Pagani. We're really grateful that part of being a head of school is to be nimble, so we worked it out. So thank you for helping us. And Amanda, why don't you share with us your story, please?
Hi, everyone. So happy with you. So I often joke with Yossi Prager that I've done every possible Avichai program that there ever has been. And similarly to Mark, I wondered if maybe not even naming my own child, but I would have to somehow change my name to incorporate Avichai, as I have been completely sponsored my Jewish education and my entire adult life. So I grew up in New Jersey, and I went to a day school through the 5th grade. And so having had, sort of a very strong foundation, but then losing it along the way as I went to public high school and kind of didn't have an intensive Jewish learning experience. When I graduated from Barnard, I decided to head to Pardes in Israel for a few years, at the time for 1 year, to learn Torah in a very serious way, which is something that I hadn't had the opportunity to do. And at the time, I was interested in education. I was looking at charter schools and what alternatives to public education. And when I got to Pardes, just to learn for the year, it was the first year of the educators program. And I was so moved by just the learning and my own experience that I was thinking, like, how could I possibly teach anything else, right? Like, how could I go into a career in education and teach math when teaching Torah was so rich and so profound? And so I quickly jumped on board, and I spent another 2 years. So I ended up spending 3 years in Israel with the Pardes Educators Program. I came back to the States, and I taught in the New Jersey, New York area for a few years. in the meantime, did a whole bunch of other programs as they came up that were Avichai, the Jewish New Teacher Project, the mentoring program, which I did at a time in my career where I had been teaching for a few years and I was ready for another challenge. And it was an incredible program that still sticks with me as a head of school today, which I'll talk about in a little bit later. And after a few years in the field and doing all sorts of work, the opportunity came up. I sent my first child was ready for preschool. He ended up in a school that was looking for its first head. Luria was a brand new school and hadn't yet had a head of school. And they came to me and they said, "Do you want to be a head of school?" And I said, "I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be head of school." And luckily, DSLTI was waiting for me in the summer and was sort of the perfect next step as I began the next step in my career. And Avichai basically has been there to support me the entire time. And so everything that I've been able to do to impact the field and to support my teachers and my students has been on the shoulders of this incredible work and support that I've had. So I'm extremely grateful for that and look forward to the next few minutes together.
Thank you. Rabbi Adam Englander, please.
Hi, everybody. This is good? I tend to be too loud sometimes. It's my principal voice. Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. So I grew up here in the Long Island area, actually. I grew up in a modern Orthodox community. I was actually always in Jewish day school my entire life. Schools like Halb and Hafter, some of the larger Jewish day schools in the Long Island, 5 towns area. And had definitely a positive experience, but I would hardly say that I was on fire about it in terms of my own personal Judaism. In other words, I learned a lot, but I don't know how much of it was I was really that excited about. Went off to Israel, got a little bit more excited about it there, and it was actually in college at Yeshiva University where I changed paths. My parents weren't too happy about it. I was supposed to be a doctor, of course, and I decided I wanted to go into education. I was really, I was involved in some Jewish youth stuff, and I was like, this is what I want, and ultimately became a teacher. I became a Rebbe in a yeshiva high school in Long Island. Loved the experience, but it was kind of like I was, figuring it out on my own as I went. Definitely did graduate school with it, but it was mostly, I would call it, on-the-job training, but very much on my own. I didn't get a lot of mentoring and a lot of guidance in the particular school that I taught in. It was my first job, so I didn't realize like how little I was getting and how toxic the culture was, but that's for another story. But eventually I was like, I love this, and I knew I wanted to go into administration. Applied for a job in Boca Raton, Florida. Also, I was actually pretty young, and I got the job, and it was actually good. I didn't know that much about being a principal, because if I really knew what it involved, I don't think I ever would have applied for the job. Sometimes it's good when you don't know what you don't know. So. And that was, but it ultimately was a great experience. That's going back 11 years, and it was the Avichai sponsored Harvard program was one of my first experiences that I went on. That job was different. I did have a great mentor and a lot of great experiences, but it was really one of the first experiences of my life, which was this incredible professional experience, really high level, really intense, really smart, really connecting you with incredible people. And just with myself and my own learning, and I really felt like it set me off on a more positive trajectory in terms of my own learning and my own growth and my own leadership. And now I'm in my 3rd year as the head of school at this same school, the Katz LLD School of Boca Raton. I've actually done Harvard twice. I've done 2 of their programs. I love it so much. I would do it again. I did it this past summer. It's like the ultimate vacation for me. My wife doesn't like when I say that because she says I sound like a nerd when I say that, but it's true, and I love it, and I have a lot of gratitude to all of you and to the Avichai Foundation for that. So thank you.
Thank you. You've all mentioned the roles of being a head of school are complex, and how the different Avichai programs have sort of helped you. Could you say a few words what you think nowadays is the most important part of leading a day school? And how you've done it, if you could share some personal stories in your own school. So we'll start with you, Amanda. If you could share something, your thoughts on that.
Sure. So I remember my first experience learning at Pardes when I sort of really learned my first daf of Gemara and feeling like, why am I 22 years old and doing this for the first time now, right? Why didn't I have this skill set and access to this, which is our text, in a sophisticated way? And I sort of made a personal commitment that I was never going to let, the students who are either I'm teaching or are in my school have that same experience, right? I am committed to every student, no matter what they're going to do with it. I don't care if they learn Torah for the rest of their lives or they don't. I want, under my care, they are going to leave me with a sophisticated Jewish education and skills and access to these texts that are really theirs and are ours. And so that was sort of what inspired me as a teacher, and I think continues to inspire me as an educator. And the other piece of that is that it didn't happen for me until I was able to access the text on my own, right? Directly and independently, not through someone else's lens, not through someone else telling me about it, but actually me doing it. And so much of what I was about as a teacher and now as a head of school is being a facilitator of learning. I work with my teachers to do it for our students. How do we inspire? How do we give the skill set and then inspire our students to really learn independently and directly? How do we sort of support them from the sidelines? And I do the same thing for my teachers, right? We are all from every Havichai program that I did, from the Jewish New Teacher Project mentoring and DSLTI and the Pardes Educators Program, it was all about being a reflective practitioner. How am I going to reflect on who I am, on how I am as a leader, on who I am as a teacher, and how am I going to help those around me do the same? And so I still now, I try and model it, right? I have coaches from these programs and mentors and peers that I'm reaching out to. I'm always thinking about my own professional growth. I model that for my teachers, and I demand that they do the same, right? That's how we don't do like a review of our teachers. We give them the opportunity to reflect, to process how they're doing, what they think they need, and then we sit with them and we give them the opportunities for professional development after that. So I see myself as a facilitator of my teachers, of my faculty's growth and development, and they see themselves as facilitators of learning for our students. And so I think being really reflective, both as individuals and as an institution, it creates this opportunity for our students to gain these skills about being independent, about being inspired through their own lens and wanting to be lifelong learners for themselves, not for other people, not for outside sources. And I think it also inspires the families in our school to appreciate and value the idea and the concept that, like, if something's not working, we're going to work harder. We're going to figure it out. We're going to reflect on it together. We are really about being able to grow and to learn from our process and look really seriously and thoughtfully at what's not working. And so much of that for me, and I think therefore my faculty and my students, comes from the experiences that I had and the common language around best practices for how to be a leader and how to grow.
Thank you. Wow. Rabbi Englander.
I think we all know that in terms of leaders, we have to make sure that all the people around us are getting better. That's why we exist. And I would say the focus that we've taken, and a lot from the inspiration that I've taken from these Harvard programs, has been the notion of a real deep focus on instruction and improvement of instruction, and on the interactions that are taking place, the most important interactions, which are between teachers and students in a school. That's what it's all about. It's the people, it's not the programs. And something that's happened a lot over the last several years is a real emphasis on professional development in our school. But I would say on a high level, we've invested a lot more money into it, and not just in like bringing in great speakers, great presenters, which is really nice. It's got to be ongoing, and it's got to be job embedded. And something that's gone on in a lot of schools, but I think we've really taken it to a great level, are PLCs, which are called professional learning communities. And in these professional learning communities, which are really teacher-led, we've now had for several years teachers on their own running these groups on a monthly basis, with each one with a different focus, and it's voluntary. No teacher has to be a part of it, but most of them volunteer to do so. And they lead their own learning, and they take charge of it, and that's something that I'm really proud of. And we've also taken a an approach of looking at the data with surveys, anonymous surveys, really getting a sense for how teachers are growing and how they perceive the program, and they love it. We actually, just a few months ago, we also brought our entire faculty together to a ropes course where you focus on team building and overcoming personal obstacles and challenges, and that's kind of like become the norm. They know this is a place where we're investing in them, and we want them to grow, and they want to grow. People want to grow. It's just you have to I think create the right environment for it. And I think that through our investment in this professional development with a real focus on instruction, and also, by the way, we've even our whole leadership team as coaches and mentors outside of our school, that's also really helped us to take it to the next level, and that's something that I'm really proud of. We also just want to add on one more thing. We also I think we've done a better job, thanks to the focus on people and the teachers, of taking care of them, making sure that we give appropriate raises, making sure that we bumped up everybody's pension programs, like some of the little things that may not relate specifically to instruction in the classroom, but a notion of we love you, you are our people, and we take care of you, and we wanna show that to you. That's also, I think, been a big part of the leadership as it relates to this and to the people in our school.
Thank you. Mark?
Thanks. I would echo a lot of what Adam and Amanda said, and I want to actually just underscore what they said and then add something, which is, in many ways, I often say schools, sadly, are places where some learning takes place, but often they're not learning organizations. Places that are voraciously introspective, where people are always pursuing greater self-understanding, greater improvement, and in today's world, I think there's just no room for anything other than constant push to improve. And I think in some ways what I heard you guys say is that as the heads, we have to be kind of the chief learning officers and the chief self-improvement officers. And you can't do that unless you have a culture that is safe and nurturing, and so we're also the chief culture officers of our school. I want to add something else, which is in part inspired by Simon Sinek's famous Golden Circle TED Talk, which I'm sure some people are familiar with, which is that especially in today's world where I think there's very big questions that our schools and Jewish institutions are facing about changing nature of Jewish identity in the 21st century and the changing nature of education, we have to be what one of my friends calls the chief reminding officers of the why. We have to be constantly asking and answering the question of why are we here? Why are we doing this hard work day in and day out? And where are we going? Mission, vision, that is the motivational context within which all of our stakeholders have the patience and courage to do the hard work of education. So I've been increasingly feeling like one of our most important roles is to day in and day out, through our words and our passionate actions, both give people the language and the mental models for understanding the purpose behind this entire endeavor, again, as the motivational context for all of our work, and then passionately living out both our mission and our values that really animate our work every day.
I could sit here all day listening to these people. It's just incredible. All three of you are quite accomplished relatively early in your careers. You're young, you've mentioned that. Can you just share with us in some detail, share with the trustees and the foundation staff, elaborate for us something that you're very proud of and how you brought it about, and hopefully also how some of the programs you've taken with Avichai sort of helped you achieve that. Adam, would you like to go first, please?
So, okay, I'll mention something that it's been a lot of buzz in our school recently, has been really, I guess, more on the financial side in terms of affordability, which is, of course, one of the issues in Jewish Day School today. We're actually currently in our 4th year in a row without any tuition increase, which is something that we were itself, as we were going through it, we were very proud of. But next year, our tuition is actually going down $1,000 per child, K through 8. How did that all come about? Basically, first, honestly, it started coming about almost by accident. We focused on great education. That's what it's all about. Focus on being a great school. Things that also, I don't want to sound like I can't take all the credit, certainly, nor even can our school. Sometimes the right things are in place, but enrollment was growing, and our numbers were even better than what we were budgeting for, and we're like, suddenly a school that was operating like in a deficit all the time, we're like, wait a minute, we have some money. There's like suddenly a surplus, not like a massive surplus, and we were putting that money into finally building a reserve. And eventually we started having conversations about this affordability issue. And of course, like every school, we have a tremendous amount of people on financial aid, and we want to take tuition in the opposite direction. And that involved a lot of very complex conversations with the board, a lot of focusing on the relationships and having these conversations, which like I was really having for the first time. I'm like kind of like a lifelong educator, and as you get into the head of school role, you start dealing a lot more as like a CEO, and working with the board and working with different groups of parents and the finance committee, and we started saying like, hey, this is something that we could really do. And actually I give the programs that I learned from like these Harvard programs a lot of credit for. They get you to think that way, to think strategically and think about how you're interacting with people and all your stakeholders. It's not just about the teachers or just about the students. And eventually we all came to this realization that, hey, yeah, this is something that we need to have a reserve, certainly, but we could take part of that reserve, and we came up with this creative burn down the mortgage program. It wasn't a massive mortgage at the time, it was only $1.5 million, but we came up with kind of a way to create this program and get some donors and a matching donor, and one thing led to another, and this past year we paid off that last portion of our mortgage and became a debt-free school, and we took the money that we were spending towards that and basically gave that back to our families and said, we want to go in the opposite direction and make sure that our schools are affordable for the foreseeable future. And people are just really immensely appreciative, but I'm also just proud of like just the statement it makes, and I'm hoping we could continue the trend. So that's something that we're proud of.
I've got goosebumps, just speaking of myself. Amanda, would you like to share a story with us of your
Sure.
work?
I think the thing that I am most proud of about Luria is the diversity on two levels. One is inclusion of children with special needs, and the other is religious diversity. We are a fully inclusive environment, which means that up to a third of every classroom are children with special needs, which range from children who occasionally need a little bit of support to students who have full-time paraprofessionals at their side. And they are fully included in the classroom. All of their services that they receive happen inside the classroom. They don't get pulled out or removed from the environment. All of our learning happens here in small groups. And so students who have special needs are getting attention just like everyone is in the classroom. And so they don't feel different. You walk into a classroom at Luria, you cannot identify which student has an IEP, an individual education plan, and which student does not have one. Students are able to engage socially with their peers in ways that are very sophisticated, and in environments where in some cases these students might need a special education school, not have even thought that a Jewish education was possible. We also work to include these children in social situations. So we work with parents on how to do birthday parties, how do I make sure that birthday parties are inclusive, and that not just that everyone's getting invited, but that everyone who has any sort of need is going to be able to fully participate in the birthday party successfully. And so this is something that I think, we are pushing boundaries in ways that I think very few schools are doing right now, and we're really modeling for the field what's possible. We have schools that come to visit us basically at least twice a month. I have a school coming to see what we're doing around inclusion and how we're really making it possible for students who otherwise would need special education environments to be fully included in classrooms. And the other piece of diversity that I feel most proud of is religious diversity. We are a school that has children who come from Chabad families learning Torah with students who are parents who are intermarried, where one parent is Jewish and one parent is not Jewish. We have secular Israeli families. We have everyone in between. And we are committed to a sophisticated Jewish education for all of them. So it's not a place where parents get to say, oh, I would like a little less religion, or I would like a little less text. And we work together to explore our differences and to really learn together. I think that one of the challenges of the field, right, of not just Jewish education, but the Jewish world right now, is that people grow up in these in their own own little communities, right? I live in a community where everybody looks just like me and everybody practices Judaism just like me, and we grow up in these schools where everyone looks just like they do. And then you get into the real world and it's not the case, right? Jews don't look the same and don't practice the same, and everything doesn't look identical. And so we're giving our kids a way into learning how to be in dialogue and how to be respectful and how to communicate with each other and with people who are different from them. When our first graders have their Siddur ceremony, families get to choose from 4 different Siddurim. And they make a choice based on what their family practice looks like. And then our children learn about that. And they don't shy away from it or hide it from each other. They say, oh, what does it mean that your Siddur is Sephardi? Or what does it mean that your Siddur is a Chabad Siddur? What's different from that about my Siddur? And how do we learn together? And how do we still daven together, even though we're davening from different Siddurim? I would say it's definitely not always easy, and it's something that we struggle with, and we work really hard with our teachers and our students. And I would say that mostly the biggest challenge around it is parents and getting parents engaged and involved as well. But I think we're doing, I often talk about it as the most important tikkun that we're doing to sort of heal the world and heal the Jewish people, is giving these young children the language for being in respectful dialogue and learning to talk to each other and communicate with each other about how we're different and how we can still learn together and be in relationship with one another.
If I may just piggyback on that, 2 of the programs you attended actually modeled that, consistent with the Avichai mission, to bring Jews of diverse backgrounds together.
So I would say, for me, the reason that I'm able to do that and to be the person leading this process is because for sure the Pardes Educators Program, right? Not only, it gave me the skill set. A Chabad family comes in and they see me, and I'm a woman who doesn't cover her hair, and they get all anxious, and then we talk to each other, and I understand where they're coming from, and I understand halacha, and I take it very seriously, and I myself and I'm an observant person, and I think it makes a difference for them that I have a real understanding, a deep understanding, and I'm able to have real dialogue with them around this. And I think the foundation for me of having the opportunity to spend 3 years learning Torah in a very sophisticated way, and in a community where everyone was very diverse. And similarly, I think in DSLTI, my cohort, there are heads of school in all different types of school, and I think being able to model that and having learned that in my own practice puts me in a position to be able to support and grow a community like this.
Thank you. Mark, and I just want to mention, Mark was in our inaugural Eli Talk cohort down in Atlanta.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention that.
Oh, good.
That's true. So thank you for that opportunity to think about the why and try to articulate it. In that talk, I spoke about what I call Jewish educational leadership with soul, which was a way to share a little bit about the work that Gan has been doing with what we'd call kind of Musar-based character and Jewish identity development. I've had conversations with a number of you about this over the years. We call it our Chanoch Lana'ar program, although increasingly we're stopping calling it a program because it's just now part of our culture. In that context, I spoke about what it meant for me as a leader. But I'm super proud of this program and grateful for the kind of early support from Avichai to launch it. Partly because I think it addresses a few of the dichotomies or polarities that I think really challenge, frankly, our world, but certainly our schools. I would name 3 of them off the bat. One of them is the dichotomy between universal and particular, and especially as kids get older into high school, the assumption that my work as a moral human being and my work as a Jew might be separate from each other, or maybe even, God forbid, in conflict with one another. I think certainly a dichotomy that we deal with in Boston is the dichotomy between excellence and compassion, or excellence and soul, this notion, the gap between head and heart sometimes, I think that exists in especially our rigorous Northeastern academic institutions. And the third actually is one that exists between often the Jewish side of our school, the Jewish studies faculty, the Jewish educational mission, and the general studies, or what some people call secular studies. I personally don't like that term because I don't see anything secular about great literature. But these two sides of our school, which sometimes seem, especially in the experience of our kids, to just be totally different endeavors. And this Chanoch Lenar program, which was the idea that we could bring the language and the work of character development through really the modernized Musar tradition. And I'm grateful to Rabbi David Jaffe, who really led this work at GAN, and Alan Marinis and the work he's done in bringing this to a broader audience. But the idea behind it was actually to take what we see as an authentically, deeply Jewish experience of learning and living and integrate it into everything we do in the school, and to begin to shape that language and framework for thinking about what it means to be an athlete, a math student, a teacher, a leader. We started as we try to start any serious change initiative with the adults, and we opened it up to them to say, look, is anyone interested in this? We have intensive, what we call vadim, groups of teachers, adults from across the school doing work on themselves, personal growth work through the texts and the practice of Musar, and they flocked to it. I remember one day that a science teacher of mine walked into my classroom and was giving me some loving feedback about the school. And before she got to her critical feedback, said, I just want to say something. I'm in this Musar program, and I cannot believe that this school walks the walk. Like, it talks about it, but like, you actually give me time to work on myself as a person. It's so uplifting for me, and I'm so grateful for it. And then earlier this year, actually, when we had our school program in the aftermath of the election, we had already planned to watch the inaugural address as a school, which, as some may know, was I would say, an interesting time for educators in terms of thinking about how to frame and process, in particular, this election. One of the things I've been working on is distributed leadership. And so instead of me framing it, I asked one of my early career teachers to take the lead and to frame this watching with our school. And I did not micromanage what she was going to say. I trusted her. And she got up and said, I'd like to frame this right now in the context of two midot, two character traits. And the first is anava. And anava means humility. And she says in the Musar tradition, anava is about figuring out not only how to be small and humble, but also about how to take the right space up in a community. And she said the second is savlanut. And in the Musar tradition, savlanut is about bearing discomfort. Savlanut is patience. And a lot of people in this country and in this school have been bearing discomfort for a long time, and some of us will bear discomfort as we watch this today. But I'd like us to think about where each of us are holding in terms of our capacity to be patient with ourselves and one another. And I just felt like this is a beautiful example of LRP kind of in action. And when, as a leader, you can say it and say it and say it, but when it trickles down and comes out of the mouths of the people that you lead without you asking them to do it, it's when you begin to know you've shaped a culture. And for us, I would say the notion that actually serious moral and Jewish rigor is on par with academic rigor is something that I think hopefully will be a hallmark of our school for a long time to come, as we try to be a place that kind of pursues what I would call excellence with soul. And Chanoch Lenar has been a big part of that for us.
Wow. Thank you. Let's just use our final few minutes to wrap up with a question about what you see next for yourselves, and then we'll open it up to the trustees and staff for some more pointed questions. But why don't we start with you, Mark, since you just went last, so we'll ask you to say a few words about what's next for yourself, or for your own growth, and perhaps in your school or beyond.
Yeah, I would say when I look out over the next, let's say, 5 or 10 years or generation, and I think about GAN and the ecosystem within which we work, 3 of the burning questions for me, and I think they're questions for me as a leader, and they're questions that I think our school needs to be thinking about, and increasingly, I think they're questions that our broader Jewish community needs to be thinking about. One of them is about leadership development and what it means to be what I would call a kind of a leadership ecosystem, a place that is hospitable to the recruitment and development and retention of leaders at every level of the organization. I don't think we can just wait around and rely on foundations and Avichai and DSLTI. I think actually we all need to be in this together and seeing ourselves as responsible for developing the leaders of the future. The second, from the why perspective, is I just think we have just begun to talk about Jewish identity in the 21st century. Jewish peoplehood, the relationship between North America and Israel. And I mean, that is the context within which we are preparing these kids to go out into the world. And so I think we need significantly more conversation and vision and wrestling with big questions about kind of what exactly are we preparing kids for? What's it going to look like in 20, 30 years? And how is that going to then shape the kind of education we provide? And the last actually is more of a process answer, which is I think many schools and camps and other Jewish organizations are kind of function as islands. The silos are strong. I've been using the term linking the silos since the piece came out. It took me 3 years to realize that no one in my school knew what I meant by it. So after like 3 years, I was talking about the silos and someone finally raised their hands and was like, what are you talking about? I realized that I adopted the language without actually transmitting that to others. But
What does it mean?
there you go. So I actually think, I'm not convinced that any of us can survive or certainly not thrive without actively engaging with the broader ecosystem of which we are a part. You know, so goes the community of Greater Boston, so goes the national American Jewish community, so goes the Jewish people, so goes Gann Academy. So I can either be acted upon by that ecosystem, or I can figure out what it means for us to be agents of positive change in it. And I think that has implications for boards and heads and actually all of us as we begin to think about what that might look like going forward.
Thank you. Adam?
Some of what you said I certainly would echo, but specifically with the, when I think about the coming years at our school, one of the things that comes to mind is certainly the notion of building capacity and really making sure that that there are leaders. I mean, it's already happening a lot. And, you know, a lot of it means the leader, the head of school, the principals have to learn how to take that step back and let others move into those roles. But I think we just have to redouble our efforts and put people with, you know, really distribute that leadership so that we could really make it a stronger school on every level. But one thing on a different note, something that I see as the coming challenge for our school that kind of reflects back on everything that we've said this morning, and I realize maybe I have to talk to Amanda about this. We, over the last many years, have taken in many more children that have learning challenges and learning needs. As our school has grown, and we've had a reputation for catering to the needs of each individual child, and we definitely were talking the talk. But as we were walking the walk, we've been meeting challenges with it, and we're at this point. I think we've been getting to this point, but I'm only realizing it in the last month or two that there's this kind of stress and tension surrounding it, where we want to take these kids, the teachers want to take some of these kids, and they're in the classrooms, and we're providing some level of support, but maybe it's not enough, and we're feeling that frustration from the teachers, and there's this sense of, have we opened our gates too much? Are we trying to be too many things to too many different people? And like, I'm pushing back, no, but of course these are our kids, and of course this is where we need to be. And like, honestly, haven't fully figured it out yet, and it may take some time, but I know we have great people, and I know there's a lot of great leaders within our system, and I know people want to do the right thing. We just have to figure out exactly how to do it, and that to me is something that I think I need to reflect back upon all that I've learned throughout my career, but in particular through through programs like these, about being strategic and focusing on people and making sure the professional environment is there and the support and all that needs to be to ensure that we're taking care of each and every child that wants to be a part of our beautiful Jewish day school system.
Thank you. Achrona Chaviva, Amanda?
So I think that where I feel like we need to be going and thinking about is just, how do we be better at educating our students, right? How do we Luria grew, we added 50 students from last year to this year, and last year, and had a wait list. And for this coming year, we're adding 30 students and we will be at max capacity physically, and we're leaving 60 families on a wait list. And my question is, part of it is Brooklyn, and it's a good time to live in Brooklyn, but part of it is that we know we need other schools doing the kinds of things that we're doing. You know, families call me and they say, well, you have to take my kid, because where else are they going to go if you don't take my kid? And right now I don't have the answer to that question. And I think that it's not just about educating children with special needs, it's about educating every child in a way that is exciting and interesting and sophisticated and thinks about a whole child, from the academics to the social emotional, and thinks about those things in the same way, right? With the same sense of value to both of those components, and makes it engaging and exciting. And I think so much of the learning that's happening in classrooms, this is in addition to wanting to, support and grow our fields of leaders and teachers and all these things, but it's the kids themselves. We are offering something that is really engaging. We are facilitators of learning. Students are developing themselves as Jewish children, as the future leaders of the world, and getting a really sophisticated academic experience. And I think, for me, the standard of excellence that was established by every Avichai program that I participated in, right? For the Parties Educators program, the Avichai Foundation said very clearly, we are not going to send day school teachers into the field until they are really sophisticated learners of Torah themselves, right? They're going to go out there, they're going to be really good at teaching, and they're going to have a really high level of Torah themselves. DSLTI, we want to give you the best research, the best mentors and coaches, the best cohort, and we want you to do it at the highest level of excellence, and we want you to go lead from that same way. And that's how I feel about our classrooms. Our classrooms need to be excellent. Everything about them needs to be excellent. Everything we're doing with our staff, everything we're doing with our students, it has to be excellent. It has to be thinking about every aspect of a child. It's not just about their academics being excellent. It's not just about their personal growth and their executive functioning skills. It's about all of those things being excellent and meeting the needs of every single child. And I want to figure out, how do we help other schools say yes? How do we help other schools be better at everything they're trying to do? How do we model and bring them in and be partners so that they can take that student that they weren't sure that they could take, and not only take them, but also meet their needs? And I think that there are so many ways to do it. For me, it's about shifting your frame, right? It's just a little bit about shifting who you've been for the last 50 years so that you can be open to the possibility of doing things a little bit better than you've been doing them, and of being able to really meet the needs of kids with small tweaks, right? You don't have to look exactly the same as this school or that school, but you have to be open to possibilities. And I think that we need to challenge each other in our classrooms and in our day schools to really do that, to go beyond our comfort zone and to push beyond, so that we can deliver an excellent Jewish education for every child.
Thank you. I'm sure what everybody has said has raised thoughts and ideas and questions in the minds of our trustees and staff. So let's use the last 10 minutes for people to ask some questions of our panelists. Ruth?
This has been fascinating, and everything could be elaborated on, but may I ask a question from outside what you said? I'm interested in the question of civics, because the Talmud, one can study it. It was developed over 2,000 years of not a sovereign people. When you talk about midot, it's wonderful, but Rabbi Israel Salanter was not interested in defensive warfare. And also one lives in America, and I find that there are many Jewish day schools in which one does not say the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning. So I would like to ask you, do your schools say the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning?
And let's keep the answers brief so that we can turn to
I'm
some.
just interested in that as a starting point.
Yes.
We use it as a learning opportunity, and every year the students decide whether we say the pledge or not, and if so, how.
Amanda?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Okay. The question was, in your school, is the Pledge of Allegiance recited every morning or in other contexts?
Yes, the children say the Pledge of Allegiance and Hatikva every morning after their davening.
Whew. Okay.
By the way, just to be clear, in case it's not clear, by the way, there are K-8 schools where the kids start every day in a classroom. We're a high school, And most high schools, by the way, not just Jewish high schools, don't say the Pledge of Allegiance anymore, which is a larger conversation about American civic education
Thank
that
you.
you're bringing up.
Alan?
First, Michael, thanks for setting this up. The three of you are just amazing and make me feel good to have been a part of this organization over so many years. My question's for Adam, and you had mentioned, I don't know if you're a rabbi, I really would say rabbi.
Yes, he is.
Sorry.
Call me Adam.
You mentioned that you were in the enviable position of being in a surplus, even if it was just a modest one, which is rare these days at any level of the not-for-profit world, including government. And you mentioned that you decided to pass that on to the parent body through a modest reduction in tuition. I was just wondering, and I'm asking this question without a preconceived opinion, just to understand the thought process, if you thought about instead keeping tuition flat and increasing the amount of money available to your scholarship pool instead, so that it would be more targeted to those in financial need.
We did, but the sense, again, the sense of the entire I guess group of decision makers was that it was like the kind of the time had come. We have been, at least in our opinion, very generous with those on the scholarship end and continue to be. We were not planning on changing that whatsoever. It's been many, many years, and that number always would grow and grow and grow and grow. And given that we were already in the place where our tuition structure is such where it's kind of like common knowledge, we don't like an announce a specific amount, but when you pay full tuition, you're also, some of that money is going to help pay for others as well. So all that, yeah, that is pretty standard. So we got to the point where as we were giving so much aid, we just felt, it was time to make a statement to the entire community, not just those on scholarship needs, because it's I guess a larger conversation about equity and where, to what extent should some keep paying more and more and more, and for others, but we have that environment, and people do want to help and take care of others, but we just, I guess, thought it was the time. I guess I don't know how else to say it. That was just the sentiment of the board. But we continue with the significant scholarship assistance.
Follow up to that on the significant scholarship. Do you target it as a percentage of the total tuition base at full tuition? Or how do you determine what goes into scholarship? Is it predetermined an amount that's then allocated, or
No, it's not. It's need-based to the families, and we do the best that we can. We do have we officially have certain minimums, which is itself, I know, a controversial matter, where we have said that families have to pay at least approximately 40% of the tuition, and unless it's some kind of really crazy situation, we won't violate that, kind of telling them to go, kind of find it some other way, and family and whatever. So we do give significant scholarship, and about 50% of our families are on some form of scholarship assistance. But it's not like some predetermined amount. We look at it year by year based upon our families.
Other questions? Lauren?
Sort of a vague question. First of all, thank you very much, all three of you, for your work more than anything. Alumni is no longer going to be doing this in a couple of years, and I'm curious, is there a way in which you formally or informally work with each other? How do you professionals nurture each other? And maybe not, or is it all personal? I'm curious whether there's some way in which that happens.
The question is about professionals nurturing one another. Amanda, were you able to hear the question?
Sorry, can you just, no.
Lauren's question was, since Avichai is sunsetting in another 2.5 years, and a lot of the professional growth comes from programs that we've brought people together, how are you thinking about continuing that and supporting one another or growing from one another after 2019?
And the next generation.
And the next generation,
Take your place.
assuming nobody takes over our programs. So, Amanda, I just wanted you to have a chance to go first.
That's a great question. Look, I think that for me, the work that has been done already and the language that we've been given and the tools that we've been given, where we have to pass them on, right? The programs that we're all creating in our schools around, professional learning communities and faculty rounds and giving, and our teachers who are getting the opportunity to have the mentorship, to be mentors, to learn how to be mentors. I think that for me, it's about how are we insisting that we are growing, that we're growing leaders, that we're creating a culture of growth and leadership, and that we're gonna model and continue to do this. So I do hope that there will continue to be opportunities like these programs, but I think the culture that we are creating in our schools and the leaders that we are creating who will, God willing, go off and lead in other places, that will continue.